Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me for my review of Call of the Night Episode 2, Do You Do Line? We start off with a brief recap of the first episode, basically explaining that Yamori is trying to fall in love with Nozuna, so that when Nozuna drinks his blood, he will turn into a vampire and become interesting. Maybe he could even star in his own anime. So they do this gag where they're about to share phone numbers, and then Nozuna is like, do you do line? So maybe this episode is brought to you by them, or maybe not, because then they kind of insult the company afterwards. But when they actually go to exchange numbers, Nozuna realizes that she doesn't actually own a phone, and then runs back to her house because she remembers she actually used to have one, and pulls out this super old 80s humongous cell phone. And then she says that she's not going to carry it around with her because it's too heavy. And kind of a lot more of, Yamori and Nozuna sort of wandering the streets, kind of making some comments. We kind of see Yamori kind of already starting to get a little jealous that Nozuna is drinking blood of other people, and then he starts playing hard to get a little bit. This show is all sorts of messed up. I can't imagine the messed up relationships that the creators must have went through in order to create this thing. But I still do continue to love the soundtrack. It's really good and one of the highlights of the show. I do hope the show becomes more than Yamori just wandering the streets for 90% of the episode. Okay, good. They bought some wristwatch walkie-talkie things so they can communicate with each other and not have to spend the entire episode looking for each other. And then there's this weird having fun montage set to 80s music between the two. And there's also this minor subplot of how Yamori had bought one of these watch walkie-talkie things as a kid, but he had no friends, so he left it in a public place, and then it was stolen. But he was too afraid to push the button because I guess he was afraid that no one else would answer. So then at the end of the episode, he's wearing it with the new one that he had bought, and he's wondering if anyone still had the old one. And then he gets a notification on the old one, and then I don't think we're introduced to a new female character. I think it's the girl that asked Yamori out in the first episode, but we'll continue to get to build up this love triangle. This is another solid episode. This is definitely not a very plot-heavy show, at least not yet, but it's well-paced, and I think the high production values make you want to keep watching. In particular, the beautiful colors, the character designs, and the excellent soundtrack. The second episode was fairly similar to the first, with everyone kind of walking around aimlessly at night and making a few lewd jokes. That said, the end of the episode seems to hint at moving the plot forward a little bit, and now that the characters actually have a way to communicate with each other, I'm thinking that things are probably going to start to ramp up in the next episode. There are only, 3 characters right now, but at least the 2 of them that we've actually explored are pretty interesting. And we're starting to get hints about their pasts and how they're both pretty lonely before meeting each other. And this part is kind of generic, but we see that Nozuna actually seems pretty interested in Yamori for a relationship. And is just sort of pretending she just wants his blood and has no interest. So they're kind of both doing a little bit of a hard to get thing. But I guess if they were honest with each other, we wouldn't have much of a series now, would we? The comedy didn't hit as hard for me in this episode as it did in the last one. The cell phone gag was all right. I didn't find the transceiver story to be particularly funny, though maybe it wasn't even meant to be. But other than that, we're starting to get into some deeper themes, and I think there's some pretty interesting stuff kind of buried in the funny gags and the double entendres. One thing in particular is when Yamori is kind of walking around, looking for Nozuna, one of the million times that he does that. And then he's sort of reflecting on the differences between how he feels when he's alone versus when he's alone kind of but expecting to see someone, and how it, kind of makes him feel different. So there definitely is, some deeper things going on in this show that I'm looking forward to seeing them explore. All in all, I think this was another solid episode. Maybe slightly not as good as the first one, but I still give it another 7 out of 10. But definitely still keeping me looking forward to next week, and hopefully start introducing a little bit more conflict and some plot, and kind of see how the show develops. Anyway, thanks so much for checking out this episode. Thanks so much for checking out this review. If you enjoyed it, I really appreciate a like or subscribe. I do figure reviews, thinking about probably doing them Tuesday and Friday, and I'll probably do this anime review on Thursday. So check out some of those other videos. Thanks so much, and keep collecting.